Okay, for today's lesson, we're going to be looking at the regions of Texas. In Texas, we have 4 major geographic regions. When we look at our map for Texas, we're going to divide it up this way. First, we have one line that goes straight through here. Then we have another that goes through here, and another through here. So this gives us our 4 regions of Texas. Our first region is this region right here called the Gulf Coastal Plains. It lies along the Gulf Coast right here at the Gulf of Mexico. Houston is included in the Gulf Coastal Plains. Now the line that you see for the Gulf Coastal Plains travels up north, and it's going to divide between Dallas and Fort Worth. So Fort Worth is in one region and Dallas is in the Gulf Coastal Plains. Even though it's way far up here away from the Gulf of Mexico, it's still the Gulf Coastal Plains. Now the interesting thing about this general area is if you look at this elevation map, how much darker the green is in this section. That's because this region of Texas has the most water resources and gets the most rainfall. You're going to see all these little rivers and creeks and bayous that run through this area. Lots of water resources. And all of the water resources, like we saw in the river video previously, all run towards the Gulf of Mexico. So that's a huge thing. Lots of rainfall in the eastern section of Texas. Okay, the next section we're going to be looking at is the one right where Fort Worth was, like we were just talking about a second ago. That is this section right here in the center. It's called the North Central Plains. The North Central Plains still has some pretty good soil, has a good amount of rainfall, not as much as the Gulf Coastal, but it still has a lot of rainfall. What you'll notice here with the North Central Plains is that the green section on the elevation map is a little bit lighter. It's a little bit higher in elevation, which means the land is taller. It still has those water resources, but it's not as dense as the Gulf Coastal Plains. Okay, the next section has 2 names for it, and you're going to have to note each of those names. This section right here in the tan and the brown is called the High Plains, and I remember it's the High Plains because it's the highest one. It's all the way up here, it's the highest. And then it's also called the Great Plains. I remember it's the Great Plains because it almost is shaped like the outside of a G would be shaped. So that's how I remember it's the Great Plains whenever I'm looking specifically at that. Now the High Plains and the Great Plains, again, same exact thing. It is the same exact region. You will need to know those 2 terms interchangeably when you're looking at the regions of Texas. It is the same section. The last section is this section way out west. It has the highest elevation, and this is the Mountains and Basins region of Texas. It's full of mountains and, you guessed it, basins. This is the driest area of Texas. There's not a lot of rivers, not a lot of rainfall out here. So this area way out west is going to be very reliant on irrigation for their crops, if they have any crops at all. Okay, so let's take a look at how you can remember these 4 regions using a hand signal. Take your left hand and point it towards the ceiling with your palm facing you. Keep your thumb sticking out. Now, if you look at your hand the way that it's situated, it kind of looks like the state of Texas a little bit, right? Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to look at each section of your hand. The first section we're going to look at is this section right here at your palm. This is going to be your Gulf Coastal Plains. Alright, so if you look at your palm as it's faced towards the ceiling, it's going to be the Gulf Coastal Plains. The next section are your fingers that are kind of hung down right here. Let me change the color for you. We'll do that one in green. Your fingers that are folded over are the north central plains. The north central plains. The next one, we'll do that one in purple, all the way up here at your finger that's pointed towards the ceiling, down to part of your palm. This one, remember, it has two names. That is the High Plains, and it's also known as the Great Plains. You have to know both of those names. And finally, we have way out here on your thumb, the Mountains and Basins region. Now remember, as you move closer towards the west, you're going to have less and less rainfall. So the more you move to the west, you have less rainfall. If you move towards the east, you have more rainfall. That's very important because this section over here gets most of the rain and it gets most of the water resources. Out here in the west, you're going to have to deal more with irrigation than you do out east.